I felt like I had a little bit of a handle on it where I was like, okay, if they intubate him, it doesn't mean he's necessarily like gone forever. Like, it's happened 10 times. He'll be fine. So it was kind of this catch 22 of feeling like, oh, as soon as I knew he was admitted, I'm like, damn, this is it. Like, this is gonna be it.
My mom has stage 4 cancer in her bones and in her breast. My dad's disease was 15 years, he died of ALS. I made a podcast about death, seemed like the thing to do. And if you're sad by all of this, well, you're gonna die too.
Little BBs. Ew, I hate that so much for us. Let's not keep connecting on what I just said. But hello and welcome to the Dying of Laughter podcast. This is Chelsea London Lloyd. If you're new here, what it do? If you're old here, you're old. Just kidding. But welcome back. Seriously, I appreciate returning moments such as yourself. Speaking of returns, smooth transition. Just got back from a wedding weekend in the Tahoe area. Shout out to Tahoe's horrible air. It's really unfortunate. The air quality is not good. Unfortunately for those in Tahoe, some people are vaccinating. You literally can't go there right now. And Reno as well. It's been smoky for about 3 weeks and they're expecting fires on and off through December, according to my Uber driver. Don't fact check me on that. Actually, do fact check me on that and let me know if the facts are accurate. But my heart hurts for those in the Tahoe area and for those in other places in California and elsewhere affected by wildfires. I was getting a little existential and thinking about all of that. And yet, I know we shouldn't dwell on negativity, but I just wanted to be honest about that and put that out there for those who might not be aware. The California wildfires are very real, and I'm hopeful for a solution. Climate change is real, people. Basically, what I'm saying is, why the fuck do we not all own Teslas? Think about that. Price point aside, make it happen. No, JK, but I do hope Teslas can become affordable at some point, and then we could all have an electric car. Meanwhile, guess I'll settle for a Prius. Anyone out there ever like riding a convertible, your hair's whipping through the wind, hitting that bass, that music just be blaring, you feeling so good, feeling yourself running that hand through your hair, and you're like, damn, I'm a baddie in a Tesla. And then you look down and you're like, oh shit, I'm a Jew in a Prius. Same difference. Anyone else? Can we relate? What's happening? All that to say, that is the reason that my voice is extra gravelly today. If anyone noticed, I believe it is still impacted by the bad air from my 3-day trip. Fortunately, at the wedding itself, the air somehow cleared and it didn't smell super smoky, but it did smell smoky earlier in the day before the wedding and the day after. Sunday, it was really bad. And then we left Monday morning and we had headaches and I couldn't even walk without feeling like I was going to throw up even when I got back home. So that was rough, but the wedding was absolutely beautiful. It was my friend from high school, Christina. What's up, girl? You looked stunning, my darling. And it was a really beautiful time overall. Don't you love when people talk about their beautiful times and you're like, good for you. I wasn't there. I don't care. Well, maybe check my stories because your girl posted pics so we can all cur. I had a new dress, sticky boobs. Sticky boobs, great for pics, not great for dancing, not great for weddings. You sweat them off, then what happens? I don't know. Not going to share more details, but you can just use your imagination to think about that. Moment of silence for the awkward point of this podcast where we now think about my boobs. You know what? Not that creepy, seeing as you're not seeing me right now. So I'm kind of okay with where we're landing. Please don't cancel me just because I talked about boobs. Female empowerment, yay boobs, yay everything. I feel like I should be extra uncanceled. Like, what's the opposite of being canceled? What is uncanceling when you're like the opposite of a dick? You're like an awesome female empowerment person. That's who I want to be. That's who we are. Welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Goodbye. Hello. Now I'm just saying words and phrases. Blessings. Guys, I am on one today, but like on what? I don't know. Water? Fun fact about me, I've actually never done a drug. Did you know that? No, you didn't. Do you believe me? Yes, you do. Am I telling the truth? Yes, no, maybe. I don't know. No, really, I am. I don't count weed. So what else can I tell you? Was called back for a recurring guest star on a CBS show. Holy F, life would have changed. Did change in a moment, thinking about it, didn't get it, moving on. It already shot. Who got it? Do I know her? Is she famous? Is she not? Is she up and coming? Do we look like? So many thats. As long as she's not an up and coming Jewish comedian, we're good. No, just kidding. We support up and coming Jewish comedians the most, but you know what I mean? Do you? I don't know. Are you an actor? Are you relating to this? Did you have an audition? Do you wish you did? What's happening? Where do you live? Do you want to become an actor? We can talk about it. I can give you advice. You guys, I'm so weird right now. Honestly, I'm going to wrap things up. Speaking of weird, I am so weird right now, you guys. Okay, speaking of weird, well, just kidding. I'm always weird. Today's guest is super weird. I am joking, but Michelle is our guest and she is awesome. Michelle Emanuela Ricciardi, obsessed. So we met last year when I was working for BuzzFeed. I produced the Losing a Loved One to COVID-19 video. Michelle was one of the 6 selected participants out of hundreds of submissions. She had a really poignant and moving story about losing her father last year to COVID-19 and the complications surrounding that. Definitely Google BuzzFeed Losing a Loved One to COVID-19. You can't miss it. And watch the video, hear her story. I'll also throw the link in the show notes and or swiping up on my story so you can check that out. I think that Michelle does a beautiful job of explaining the heartbreaking truths of what it's like to lose someone to COVID-19 and about how she shared her story with the coworker, which then ultimately convinced or highly suggested or highly motivated this coworker to get vaccinated, which I think is a really positive thing that storytelling can do. So thank you to Michelle for opening up about that and about her father's journey and illness. We talk about how she opened up for the BuzzFeed video, what it's like making end-of-life decisions for your parent, and what it's like to say goodbye over video chat, and so much more. Michelle is an actress and Queens native whose mission is to create inclusive content connecting folks through collaboration and honesty. She's performed in multiple off-Broadway plays, musicals, and concerts, and is currently in pre-production for her next project, Next Exit. Michelle, I appreciate you. I see you. I feel connected to you. I look forward to continuing the conversation about this dead dad journey that we're now on together. Shitty ass club, but it's better with people like you in it. So I appreciate her story. I hope you guys do too. And I'll talk to you next week. Yodo, you only die once. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being here. I so appreciate getting to speak with you. One question I ask everyone at the beginning of these interviews is about your goldfish moment. And your goldfish moment is the first time you thought about or conceptualized death in some way. For some people, it was a goldfish. Does something come to mind when I bring that up?
Goldfish moment. Did your goldfish die? Goldfish moment. Did it make you cry?
I was thinking about it and I realized that it was probably movies before it was actual family or friend death, which is really interesting because I watched a lot of mature content way too young. My parents were not really like trying to keep it from me. So it might have been Jack and Titanic. It could have honestly been. It's the first one that I remember, but then I do remember a first like family funeral when I was about 5. And it was my grandfather who had passed away, like 5 or 6 years old, I believe. Yeah, 5. And I remember not really knowing it was him. Like he used to be a pizza delivery guy and he'd come to the house and I'd get scared because I'm like, why is the pizza delivery guy coming inside? And it was kind of weird. But I do remember that being the first like funeral that I went to at 5, not fully grasping that it was for this family member. I just thought we were going somewhere. Why are we all dressed up? Why are we here? And then yeah, that was probably my first experience, like in real life, IRL of death. But yeah, it was probably more movies and growing up and probably having to ask my parents, hey, what's going on with that? And then them explaining. They didn't both fit on the door.
That's such a good point. I'm so glad that you brought that up. And that is so true. There is a lot of tragedy in movies, even Disney films. Those chicks have rough childhoods. If you really break it down, I'm like, what's happening to Disney girls in their 30s? I don't know. Maybe there'll be a follow-up on that because they all have like deceased parents and like are abandoned and people kissing them at bizarre times. It's the whole time.
They got a lot going on.
They had a lot going on. Well, if you could please share a little bit more with the listeners about where you're located, and can you tell us about your upbringing, who you grew up with, where you grew up, etc. We're honoring your dad today, so I'd love to hear more about your childhood for context.
Yeah, of course. I grew up in Queens, New York. I grew up in Middle Village, which is a tiny little part of Queens that nobody really knows where that is. And because when people say Queens, they just think Astoria. But I grew up in Middle Village. I now live in Ridgewood, which is near Bushwick, Brooklyn. My mom's from Greenpoint. My dad is from Brooklyn. I grew up with my mom, Mary, my dad, Marty, and then my older brother, Michael. And we grew up in Queens together. Yeah, so native New Yorker.
4 M's. I love that. It's an M fam.
Yes.
So cute.
At Christmas, we'd write from M and M and M. We didn't write it out.
Amazing. I'm like, do you know you can get custom M&Ms now? Have you guys ever done that? You can put your photos on them and like it's a whole thing.
I had past boyfriends that would do cute things like that for their parents, and I'd be like, wow, you're really spending dough on this on these M&Ms. I'm just used to the old school ones, but they're really cute. You can totally put someone's face on it and different letters. It's I think for baby showers, it's really cute. It's cute.
It's a cute time. For my podcast launch party, I made these custom M&Ms and then COVID hit and I have all these extras and I thought I'd be like giving them out.
I love that. I want ones with your face on it.
They're like a year old. Like, what do I do? I'm like, should I throw them away or does chocolate last forever? Like, we're not sure. I feel like M&Ms probably are fine for like a creepily amount of time, you know?
Make a ton of cookies, a ton of M&M cookies.
Oh, hadn't thought of that. Great suggestion. Okay, love that. I can go on.
You could freeze it. You could freeze the dough.
Oh my gosh, options. Okay, thank you, Michelle, for these options. Okay, well, thank you for sharing about your context of where you grew up. My parents are from New York. I love it. My sister lives in Chelsea. We're here for all the New York things. And it was so great speaking with you last year on unfortunate circumstances. However, the BuzzFeed video that you did opening up about the loss of your dad to complications to COVID was extremely powerful. It was great to work with you. And I was like, I would love to hear more about that. And, you know, in the final edit, it was like we had to choose these really short clips. So I'd love if you could open up a little bit more about what it was like losing your dad to these complications. And of course, this is going to be very impactful for those who lost their dads in similar ways. So I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, thank you. It meant a lot to be in that video, and it was coming right off of it. I don't believe it was that many months after I lost my dad. I lost my dad in April on Easter Sunday. He died because of complications with COVID. It ended up being heart failure, but it was COVID related. And he was in the hospital alone in isolation for a week. And then after 1 week, he passed away. And this was really like peak in New York when it was like the center of it all. And nobody could go visit. It was very sudden. He was pretty sick beforehand, though. He struggled with a vascular disease, which was, I believe it's Wegener's vasculitis, which for those who don't know, who probably wouldn't under any other circumstance, it basically like attacks all of your vital organs and it causes inflammation, and it ended up giving him kidney failure. So for the past few years of his life, he was struggling with kidney failure, went through dialysis for a good 5 or 6 years, I believe. And then it ended up sort of snowballing into a lot of other issues, which was really hard for us as a family to navigate. My parents are divorced, and he got sick after my parents got divorced. So that was kind of interesting to navigate this time, mourning your dad while living with your mom, who's also mourning him, but in a very different way and feeling far away in the sense that they haven't been married during this time, you know. But let me get back to it. So he was in the hospital in and out for the past 2 years already. Like most of 2019, he was really struggling, and he ended up having meningitis, which 2 Father's Days ago, he almost did pass away. So that was a big change in our family, because it was like, okay, now it's almost any minute you would think something bad's going to happen. But he recovered, and then he actually ended up having to get a leg amputation, which was really unexpected. That threw us for a loop. That just kind of came out of nowhere. And he just wasn't getting enough blood flow to his leg, and they had to take his leg up like high past his thigh. But he was in recovery from that. He had been out of the hospital since February of 2020. Yeah, February of 2020, made it home. And we had home nurse care for him. And like, we were really lucky that he was finally able to be out of like rehabs and hospitals after like a 19-month, like nonstop stint for him. So it was very hard to have it be that, great, you're home, you're back. And then COVID happened and everything just like locked down, where it was like, okay, now he's really just in his house, but he had to go out for appointments and for dialysis. So he was already very high risk. And we're never going to know exactly who gave him COVID, but a few of his nurses ended up having it, like his home aides ended up having it. And then I actually ended up getting it too. So we'll never really know if it was me like in dropping off some like emergency supplies. We were definitely all staying away from each other. Like we knew, okay, this isn't safe. Dad needs to keep dad safe. You need to stay away, which I know everybody struggled with, seeing older loved ones or immunocompromised people. So we were not seeing each other for those weeks. I was teaching him how to FaceTime, kind of navigating that. But then I had dropped off some supplies for him. Like that was when they said you should start wearing masks. Like, remember they changed it when the CDC was like, okay, you should start wearing masks now. So dropped off some supplies. And then, yeah, all of a sudden he's like, I'm not feeling good. And he really tried to hold out. He's like, I'm not going to go. I'm going to be fine. Like, it's probably not COVID. Like, I'll be okay. But he was really just struggling to breathe for a few days. And then finally they admitted him. And then a week later he passed away. So none of us really got to be there. It was also a hospital he wasn't used to, which was odd because you make relationships with these people that care for your parents, especially when they're chronically ill people. You get used to their doctors, their physicians, their routine in a way. But because it was just an emergency situation, he just went to any nearby hospital. And then he passed away. And we did say goodbye to him over video chat, but he wasn't conscious. So there was no real goodbye, but that was when they were bringing like iPads up to your loved ones and, doing that. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I mean, it's such a strong image, thinking about iPads and FaceTime to say goodbye. It's really challenging. And yet I appreciate you sharing because I know there's many people that had a variation of that experience last year. Can you talk a little bit more about what it was like when he was admitted and how you were feeling, and I want to provide a safe space for you and others who were grieving last year. I think is a really, of course, unique experience. There's so much going on. Like, how did you feel and what did that look like when you yourself were isolated? Can you talk more about that?
It was almost like, not to be like melodramatic, it felt like a kiss of death. It was like, oh, he's going to get this and he's going to die. It was kind of no doubt in my mind. It was like when this was all going down, everybody being scared and trying not to get sick. I just thought, okay, if he gets this, he's going to die. But in a way, I still wasn't prepared when he did actually die because I thought, oh, well, he's been through so many things, and like, even like on the news when they were talking about like people on ventilators and like the very graphic images that were coming out, I was a little bit desensitized to it because I had already seen my father on a ventilator clinging to life. I had already seen these things happen. I already know the procedure. I also you get used to a lot of the medical, jargon, and you kind of have to learn to be your own little at-home nurse. So I felt like I had a little bit of a handle on it where I was like, okay, if they intubate him, it doesn't mean he's necessarily like gone forever. Like, it's happened 10 times. He'll be fine. So it was kind of this catch-22 of feeling like, oh, as soon as I knew he was admitted, I'm like, damn, this is it. Like, this is gonna be it. But it being that quick, like a week, it was pretty jarring. It was like, oh, he's just sort of slipping away. And it didn't feel real because you're not there. Like, I'm used to going every day and getting updates. You were lucky if you got to speak to anybody, speak to a doctor. You would call for days and maybe hear from a nurse and just get no update, really. Be like, yeah, he's still here. He's on oxygen. We're monitoring him. And then you'd call. So it was very interesting. I was calling all the time. But then you also want to try to give grace to the people working who are flooded with all these people. They're completely overwhelmed. Like, you couldn't even get a call through half the time because that's how many people were calling to try to find their loved ones. So it was definitely interesting. When it happened, I was like, okay, here it is. He's going to die. And I was sort of preparing myself for it the days leading up. But when it actually happened, it just felt like unreal. It was just like, because it's not a tangible thing. You're not there to hold their hand. You're not there to speak to anybody. So yeah, it was bizarre. It was definitely bizarre. And then also having, I don't know if you've experienced this at all, but when you tell, it's different for COVID, I think, but when you tell somebody, oh, that your family member is sick, they just immediately go to he'll be okay. He'll pull through it. It's positive.
Yeah, I've had that, or I've just had like the opposite, honestly. Like, oh my God. Like, or sometimes they're like, oh, they assume it's death when it's also not necessarily. So I've had both. But yeah, go on. Was that what was happening for you?
So then some people were like, oh, well, people are pulling through this. And they would just send me like the very lighthearted, like good stories of like this 95-year-old grandma pulled through COVID-19 after like 100 days on a, and it's like, I'm so happy for those people. And I'm able to be happy for those people while still being realistic of the fact that like, no, my dad's not going to be one of those people. Like he's not going to be one of those people that overcomes this mammoth thing that none of us really understand. But I totally understand where they were coming from. Their heart was in the right place. But I was getting a lot of that where I was saying, oh, my dad is sick. And then they'd be like, oh, well, he'll get through it. Like, of course he will. Like this kind of very, very positive, very trying to be uplifting thing.
Wow. Was that when he was in the hospital? Like, even when you mentioned he had COVID, like that was people's response? I wonder if they were deflecting because they didn't want it to happen. Yeah, I wonder what that's about. That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was just not knowing what to do. This was unlike anything we've all gone through. So I think that some people wanted to downplay COVID so that it was more like palatable for them.
Right.
And then others were like, kind of like I said, kiss of death. We were like, oh my God, you have COVID, you're gonna die. Like you're totally gonna die. So it was definitely both. Like, but it was more so, oh, he'll pull through it. It'll be fine. I'm sure he'll be home soon before you know it, or oh, they're not answering, but I'm sure that means that nothing bad happened, so it's okay. But yeah, it was definitely hard to navigate because then the only calls you would get would be the doctors asking my family to take him off of the ventilator. That
Really?
came up, that they were like, we don't have enough. They worded it much more sympathetically, but like sensitively, but they were like, your dad is already of this quality of life. Do you want to even continue to try after like a day? And I'm like, yeah, like do everything that you can. That was my family side of it. And I'm sure everybody dealt with it differently. There's no wrong answer. If you had a family member that was dying of COVID and then you said, don't resuscitate them, take them off ventilator, that's that's completely fine. But we were like, no, this guy got 9 lives. He's come through a million things. Give it a shot. Like, give everything you got. Why not? Like, he'll pull through it because we've gotten that call of he's going to die. There's not a lot of time left. And then the next day he's up, like, eating wonton soup, cursing, like, saying, like, oh, that sucked. So he always had, like, a bounce back, beat the odds type history with his health journey. So when we were getting calls being like, are you sure that you want to keep him on this thing, or that they didn't even want to put him on a ventilator. Actually, they didn't even want to do it. They were like, this could be used for somebody else. And like his quality of life might this and that. And I was like, no, like do it. So it was me and his sister, who's my aunt, making the medical decisions. And we were like, yeah, do it. Like do everything that you can. That was just all. So that's another reason why I think even in the grief process, I've been like, okay, we did everything we could. Everybody did everything that they possibly could. So at least there's been some solace in that. But yeah, we were getting asked, do you even want to bother? Like, do you even want to continue on with this? And I was like, yeah, give it a shot. So.
And thank you for sharing that you and your aunt were making decisions. I think, yeah, a lot of younger people making decisions is going to become more common as we get older, right? And things like divorce, things like other family members are not capable or not there, or not physically there, or whatever it is. And I'm sure that was definitely challenging. And thanks for your honesty around this. I mean, that must have been really tough to get the call like, hey, do you want to try? Like, you're like, what are you talking about? Yes. And then yet a week is such a short amount of time. I'm glad that they did try. That's just really, it's complicated, right? And like what you're saying about, we don't know who, and then COVID, but then he had other things and the leg amputation, and that's a lot of things. So I just appreciate your honesty here. And I'm sorry that they didn't get back to you. I mean, that's bizarre. Was that just because there were so many people hospitalized at that time?
They were just so overwhelmed, I think. Like, and that's why I try to have some like sympathy, some understanding, is that were completely flooded. There was no, you couldn't get a call through. Like it was just busy signal, couldn't get through, like, or they would always say like, let us just call you. And, his nurses did usually give me an update like once a night, but there were little things that happened. He apparently fell out of bed. We didn't find that out until after he died. He apparently had like a big complication. We didn't find that out until after he died. So like, you're not really going to, on a regular day in a not COVID world, if you wanted to call and have like somebody debrief you about like what your patient, like, what your family member's night was like, they could tell you. But here it was like, what do you mean he fell out of bed? Also his phone, he was using it for like maybe the first day or two, but then he was not able to speak or use it, But then when my aunt went to go retrieve his things, the phone was just wouldn't even turn on. Not just that it was dead, but it was like broken, like wouldn't even turn on. So then that was interesting too, because we were like, what happened with that? Like, did he drop it? Did something happen to it? So all these kind of unanswered questions that you're never really going to get an answer for, because it was just such like a powder keg of a situation. Like even afterwards, like a day later or a week later, you can't call and be like, hey, what happened with that? Because it was just everybody trying to save everybody that they could. I guess they were just so overrun. So yeah, we couldn't communicate with them as much as we probably would have liked. But then again, it also doesn't change what happened. Like knowing every detail, maybe it's good that we were spared every single, detail, but it made the week seem even more like, what? Like a week? Because I don't think we knew like every little thing that was going on. But also in a lot of ways, it felt like an eternity. I look back on the calendar now and it was a week. I really thought for a while I was telling people 2 weeks. And then I look back and I'm like, no, that was 1 week. That was one really long week. So yeah, I don't know.
Time is very interesting in these situations. And even last year in general, I'm like, it feels like it was a month, but also feels like it was 10 years. You know what I mean? I'm like, what even happened last year? I can relate to what you're saying of grieving small losses. Of my dad also had experiences of, hey, this is like a very high risk surgery. The kids need to say goodbye. A couple of times I was pulled out of high school to, say the last words, and then it was fine. So I relate to, I'm just mentioning that it's a better outcome that they had more time, but it's also a bizarre experience to think that death is approaching and then it's not. It's just interesting, right? I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about what it was like specifically losing your dad through this difficult year. There's certainly people grieving who are looking to people like you, like, how did you get through it? I know it's still recent, but what advice might you offer someone who has lost a parent, caregiver, or someone close to them in this past year? What has your grief and your grieving process looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. One thing that I learned after the fact, like a few months in, has been like, let yourself feel any of the things that you are feeling. That people have probably been told that before and they're like, yeah, easier said than done, but like you can be really pissed off and you can also be really sad and you can also be really mad at them too. And like, it all is still valid. It's still okay. And like, there's no right way, to do this. And those are all things I've heard before, but you have to try your best to take them to heart. It's kind of like when you're bad at getting a compliment. And the only way you can kind of combat that is by like, okay, I'm accepting the compliment. I'm just like gritting my teeth and accepting the compliment. It's like, okay, I can feel whatever I'm feeling right now. All right, I guess I'll sit here and I'll do it. Like there were times where I was really, really angry. That I was like, this medical system is fucked. Like the government is fucked right now. Like being away from everybody is fucked up. Like all of this is fucked up. And I'm really mad about it. And like him not answering his phone when he was able was fucked up. And like the doctor asking me if it's okay to not even plug him in anything is fucked up. Like you're allowed to be really mad, but then also at least they're not suffering anymore, which is something people also say to you. So that would probably be my advice, is that like you have to let yourself feel all the things, especially since other people are not with you. Like you weren't able to be with anybody during this time. There was no like have a funeral, have a wake, share the pictures, get a drink with a friend, get your mind off it. You were pretty much stuck inside. So it's almost like during that time you had to get very good at self-soothing and just like letting it wash over you. And because the more you try to fight it, like, if you're stuck in your like 3-room apartment, you can't run from yourself, like before you can plunge yourself into work or you can plunge yourself into something, which I'm sure some people did, and I ended up being able to do that too. Like, I'm very lucky that I somehow got inspired enough to sort of plunge it into creative endeavors. Like I really got into writing during this time, which I never thought I would be good at or like. And the whole time I just was typing, I'm like, this sucks. You don't know how to write and you're a complete imposter. But it's like, what else did you have to do? You didn't have anything else to do. At least I didn't have anything else to do when you're stuck in the house. So I think doing things for you and making it all about you. Let yourself be a little selfish during this time, I think was probably the biggest advice for me, especially because at the end of the day, nobody else was around. But if you need help, reach out to your loved ones. And like, a FaceTime call really did help me some days, or like going on a very socially distanced walk with like one neighbor was kind of the only thing I did for a few months. I'm glad that we're in a different situation now where things are opening up. So if somebody's struggling with it now, like they can do other coping things. But when it was like mid thing, you just got to do what you want to do. If it feels good to sleep till 3, and like, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to think like, oh, pull yourself up by your, pull yourself out of this thing. I'm sleeping till 3, So I think just be gentle with yourself and like, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do. And don't do what you don't want to do. My mom says that all the time. Don't do what you don't want to do. And like, if you don't want to engage with the hundreds of texts that you may have gotten or didn't get from your family member dying, that's okay. So
I love that. I'm like taking your advice as you say it. I'm like, yes, I'm not going to do that thing I don't want to do. Like as you're saying it, I'm like, yes, girl, yes. No, totally. And I'm glad you bring that up because I think for some people, their grieving process might have been halted or delayed or paused based on whatever else was going on last year, whether they lost their job or I don't know if they have kids or like whatever it is. Some people might not have fully grieved or even the interesting experience of maybe not everyone knowing. I mean, of course, there's social media and there's ways to get things out, but like, I don't know. I even have the weird experience of like connecting with people now and they're like, what have you been doing the past year? I'm like, oh, I've been at like BuzzFeed for a year. They're like, you have? I'm like, yeah. And it's been a year. So it just kind of delays and changes the grieving process, I think, depending on the situation. So that's really good advice though. And I'm glad you got to be a little bit, I don't even think selfish is the word, but I'm glad you got to write and explore that. And that's great. And I that's like, I'm totally resonating. I am an imposter. It's like they say when you're stuck, just write whatever comes to mind. So I feel you there. Because your dad had various illnesses, would that be the right word before getting the complications? Or he had various...
Yeah, you could say that. I feel like that's fine.
Yeah, health complications, I guess is a better term, before getting COVID. I do wonder, though, what was your opinion on people's, everything with masks was like crazy and vaccinations, and you don't have to go into the full details of what you do or don't believe. But I just wonder if you lost your father to something related to COVID, did it become really charged and like extra frustrating if someone close to you projected a belief that maybe you didn't agree with? Did you separate yourself from that? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's, I don't know, it just interests me. Like, I'm so annoyed by some people's opinions without even having that direct relationship.
Absolutely. And that's where that anger comes back in. Like, I will say, I don't think that I, in the past, like, I don't know if that's the right term, but like struggled with anger. I don't think I'm a very like angry person, but that was another thing that just like made me angry, was seeing people like not wearing masks, or I had a past coworker send me things that were like, this is a conspiracy, COVID is fake. And I'm like, my dad is dead, you dipshit. Like, I'm like, this is like, who are you, who are you talking to right now? Then I would have friends that, were talking about going out, and like, well, no, I mean, all my friends pretty much stayed in, but there were like friends of friends that you would see like going out or going on vacation, still peak. Or then you have all those people who love being in New York when it's, safe. And then they all fled and like left, and like acting like, how could you still be there? Wouldn't you want to get out of town? Well, if I'm from here, where am I running to? I don't have the luxury of having somebody's beach house to go to and isolate myself for 6 months, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. But I'm just saying, like, everybody's experience is so theirs and so specific. So you can't just act like one way is like right or wrong, even though the right way was wearing a mask and getting vaccinated, like that is 100% like, to me, a no-brainer, where it's like, put people at risk and like be all about you and your body, and like not going with the science at all, and like not turning on the news for even 5 seconds to see that hundreds of thousands of people died in like a day, so I think it just showed their true colors, honestly. It's like, oh, this is what you believe in. Oh, this is what you think, like that you really just have tunnel vision about this. So yeah, I definitely was angry. I definitely was speaking out to people a bit on social media too, like, which I didn't really want to engage in so much, but I was like, when you play the "my dad is dead" card, people shut up really fast. It works, and I hate to have to do that. And I remember I would cringe in the beginning, but people who are like running their mouth and being like, yeah, people die. And I had somebody die too, people who were anti-mask, going out and partying, stuff like that. It was just unreal. I also work in the work part-time in like the restaurant industry. So then even hearing all of that, being like, oh, why can't we just open back up? Like, oh, why can't we just do this? I miss going out to eat. I'm like, you're not seeing the bigger picture here. Like, this is so much bigger than your daily comforts. So that was pretty hard. And I yelled at a couple of people. Even somebody I work with now, I found out she wasn't vaccinated like very recently. And I did not get angry at her, but I was like, may I ask, why not? Like, you've shared with me, you're against it. So why not? And, their reasoning was like, they were afraid of what it would do to their bodies. But then on the same point, they were like, I'm healthy enough that if I got COVID, I wouldn't die. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. But what was good? I actually ended up talking to her about it. And I said, you know what? It's not my job to convince you to get it or not get it. I'm going to release myself of this. Like, I can only tell you the facts and my own experience. And that's that. And you do with it what you will. And then like, not even a few days later, she's like, yeah, I want to let you know I did get vaccinated and I changed my mind. And like, what you said really meant a lot to me. And I'm sorry about your dad. And then, yeah, she got both vaccinations. And it was really actually very nice. It was very nice to feel like she did because of me, even though that's not what I meant to do. I wasn't trying to be on a soapbox to make her do it, but she got it. So I think giving people the information and your opinion does help sometimes, I guess. I don't know. It was cool.
Wow. Okay. That is incredible. I'm so glad you shared that, and good for you for having that conversation. I mean, even the way you speak of it now is like, even keeled. I mean, I'm sure maybe at the time it was more, but I get so agitated when I meet someone who hasn't been vaccinated, and I don't even have the exact experience of you, but I even think of my dad, who was in a care home for over a decade from being freaking paralyzed. And I just even empathize of like, he would have been extremely high risk. Even my mom with cancer last year was high risk because of, if it gets in the lungs, like that's a death sentence for stage 4 cancer patients. And yet there's still people not vaccinated. It's so irritating, but that is good for you for having a conversation without like, because it's like, okay, I would say I'm a sensible person. You're a sensible person. Like, obviously if you scream in someone's face, they're not going to change their mind. But I feel like you spoke your piece. You have a very prime example, and that impacted someone. And then that could impact someone else in her circle. So who knows who else it goes to, so that's huge. That's really, really
that
huge.
Is cool to think about. I didn't even think about that, where it's like, it might also impact her circle, or like maybe her family, or being like, hey, I got vaccinated. Oh, maybe I should go get vaccinated. Like I think just making it that everybody is doing it, go for it, not like everybody's doing it, so you should go do it, but like, go for it. And I actually said something else too. I went, hey, if you don't care about protecting other people's bodies, think about yourself. Do you want to get on a plane? Do you want to go on like a bougie ass vacation that you've been waiting to do? Do you want to go to Madison Square Garden? Do you want to do any of those things? Well, guess what? You're going to need to have your little pass, and you're going to need to say that you got vaccinated. So fine. If you don't want to do it for all the regular human decent reasons, that's fine. Go with the asshole reasons too, that you want to like do some things that are fun in the next year or so. So that'll also show people too. Maybe people don't want the hey, think about others. No, just also practically think about others slash it makes sense. Just go. So go get vaccinated.
It'll be so interesting. The few people that I know holding out, like, are they all going to end up getting it for even just those reasons? Let's say you have to fly. I'm like, there's no way these people aren't going to fly ever again. I mean, there's some super hippie people that, you know, I don't personally know, but I've had like a few Lyft drivers that are like, I would go to the grave before I got it. I don't have to travel ever again. Like, I would never do. And totally wild conversations that I'm like, I'm trapped. I can't get out. This is a perfect opportunity for a soapbox because I'm trapped in your car. Yeah, a few people that are like, I would literally go to the grave. I'll never do it. I'll never fly again. It's unacceptable, blah, blah, blah. The government controlling me. And I'm just like, okay, dude, if you're so on another world that you'll never like leave your city again, I just can't even relate to you literally at all. So I don't know what to tell you.
Wow.
But like more reasonable people with common sense that do plan to travel again, what's going to happen? Also, I'm sorry, why does affecting other people not be enough of a reason? Like,
it should
like,
be.
Why are you more important than other people's family members? That's a whole other podcast. But hey, I'm glad that you had the positive example of speaking with someone and how that affected her. I feel like you could continue to have that effect like for years to come if there's some people that still don't get vaccinated. Speaking with you could make such a difference.
Oh, thank you. No, I interrupted you. Thank you for saying that. And like, but it is so hard because like not so hard, but 1 minute you're like, I want to tell everybody to go get vaccinated because that's just wrong for them to not. But then also like for anybody else like me who's lost a loved one, it's like, I'm already going through enough, like going through it. So you don't have to educate other people about it, you know? But I'm glad that she did end up getting vaccinated. And like, I'm not gonna lie, I felt a little differently about her for a second when she was anti-vax. I was like, what? Like, I didn't think you were like that, but it really is just like misinformation that gets spread around like fact. And it's just absolutely not. But I was going to say, it's so interesting to me that you mentioned the Lyft driver who is anti-vax. I've had the most beautiful conversations with my Uber drivers in New York. They all got vaccinated like first, all the ones that I know, and that they've been, and Ubers here, like, you know, I mean, I think it's all over America, but that you can like get an Uber or a Lyft to your vaccination appointment and things like that. And like, I don't know, everyone I spoke to was very pro doing it. And I had like a beautiful crying conversation with my Uber driver the other day about my dad passing away. And he's just like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But like, it was a really great conversation. He's like, life can start again, get vaccinated. Like, why? And we were just cursing out everybody who's anti-vax as well. So it was a very beautiful moment. I have the best conversations in Ubers.
I love your Uber driver. Okay, can we please trade? Because clearly you had the opposite. There's this meme, I forget what it is, but it's like the first image is like walking in stone-faced and like it's a cartoon of the passenger and the Uber driver being like, hi, hi. And then it cuts to as the passenger's leaving, they're both sobbing and the bubbles are like, good luck to your mom's new boyfriend's ex-husband's kid's birthday party. I hope your brother passes his grades and that your dog gets out of the vet. It's like the beginning and after.
I love that. Yeah. I have not seen that meme and I want it on a t-shirt. I love it so much. I have all the deepest, because we want to connect. We all want to connect, especially like after this year more than ever. But you have such like an openness with strangers, don't you? I mean, come on. And that you're never probably going to see them again. So good. Right. So good. The deepest, most wonderful conversations I've ever had probably in my life are with Uber drivers. I love them all.
This is amazing. You're the Uber whisperer. I love this.
I love them that they want to talk to me. I mean, some nights you don't want to talk, but like but you know what? I've gone into an Uber grumpy as hell. And those are still the nights that you have such good conversations. And you're like, wow, good of me to like get out of my own head and talk to another human. They're great. They're really great. Humans are great. They can be.
I love it. Humans are great. They can be a web series. That's a whole other story. I think in New York, it's cool that there's so much more public transpo and opportunities to like do that, and subway. You know, LA is just like a little more in your own world, your own car. And that's, you know, I love just being out there in New York. It's like you're in the scene, you're with new people. It really does. You can start grumpy and just end up neutral or happy because you just have to like face shit. So that's one of my favorite things at the East Coast.
Yeah.
Since that's a whole other, could talk for an hour about it. I won't. Since it is the Dying of Laughter podcast, I really appreciated in the BuzzFeed video you mentioning your father's larger than life energy, his sense of humor. Can you talk a little bit more about a positive or comedic moment that surrounds either your grief story, your dad specifically? What comes to mind when I say that?
The first thing, okay, this one's a little graphic as well. But this was the first, very, very, very first thing that came to my mind. So it was actually a later memory of my dad. Like so I mentioned earlier that he had a leg amputated, right? He also, like, right before the COVID pandemic hit, he had to get a finger removed as well. And we were so sad about that. We were like, oh my God, like, is this just going to happen all over his body? Like, we thought we were past that big hurdle, right? But for some reason, he stayed pretty positive about it. Meanwhile, he could be a grump, he could be pretty grumpy, but he stayed positive. But he's like, as long as it doesn't hurt anymore, whatever, they can take it. But it was his middle finger on his right hand. So he gets it taken off, and then he gets through it really nicely. He's like, okay. And then, like, we get home and he's in the ambulance and goes, I just want some fucking Chinese food. And he was just, like, excited about that. And then he started R-ing at everybody like a pirate, because his hand was, like, wrapped up in this, like, hook looking thing. And we ended up having such a great day. Meanwhile, I'm, like, devastated. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this is gonna affect his morale. Like, it's gonna affect his health journey. Like, he was doing so well, blah, 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 blah. And he was still able to, like, shoot the shit and be like, I'm a pirate, and, like, joking around with his nurse and everything like that. And, he was giving directions to the ambulance driver. He should have been a cab driver, actually. My dad was a great driver, knew everywhere in the city. And he's like, no, don't go this way, my guy. Go the other way. So he just always was, had something to say about everything, didn't mind speaking his mind. Hi, how are you? Like, the nurses in any place he ever had either really loved him, like he was like the Casanova of the floor, or hated him. They were like, oh, your father got mad. And, like, so he had a very, like, explosive sort of personality, but he was a fun guy. He was a fun guy. Always loved to eat, would sneak the nurses cookies and things like that. Or I would bring him something and he'd be, like, sharing with everybody. So, big Italian heart that loved to eat and loved to, laugh, and also to curse people out, but,
But hey, I love the range. There's range.
Yeah.
Right? Like-
He had range for days. Yeah. Yeah. But he also used to say, bad grass never dies whenever we'd go anywhere. And I always hated that. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm going to live forever. Bad grass never dies. Like, he was, like, akinning himself to, like, being like a weed, I guess, or something. And I always said, it's not true. Stop saying that. But I always thought it was so fun. Like, he just kind of, pranced around with this, like, strutted around like, I'm good, he always acted untouchable before he was sick, for sure. Like, oh, nothing bad's going to happen to me. So gusto, try to walk around with a bit of that gusto, even if it is, like, misguided, like on a day that you're feeling really, like, insecure or something. I'd be like, oh, my dad wouldn't give a crap about this, Yeah. Badass. I think he was a badass.
What a great attitude. Bad grass never dies, baby. I like that analogy. It sounds like he had a good outlook on things and a good energy as much as possible. I mean, it's complicated when you're in those situations, but it sounds like he had some sense of humor around it, which I appreciate. And even having seen my dad go through it, even I'm like, would I have a sense of humor? I mean, clearly doing this whole podcast about it. So I'm like, yes, but also it must just be, it's so much easier said than done when it's actually you. Like, you and I even can have a much clearer perspective than a lot of people, having seen our dads, and yet how challenging to really be able to joke when it's really you and when you really are facing the end, Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something, actually, if that's okay.
Sure.
When COVID was happening and we all had to be in isolation and we had to be home and stuff, it was very much like reminded me, or it made me think about, oh, wow, I'm cooped up inside. And you had mentioned that your father was in, like, a rehabilitation, like, for many years or many months, because he was immobile. Did that at all remind you or trigger you of, like, thinking about your dad? Like, I was just thinking, wow, this is only a taste of what he went through for, like, 19 months, like, being in a bed, like, never going outside, like, or never really doing anything. So did that come up at all for you, or?
Yeah, thanks for asking. No, it was definitely, I mean, triggering is a word that here's the thing. There's a lot of power in the word triggering, and it's true. I try not to use it just as a buzzword, but for the sense of it, that it's what's coming up. Yeah, it was triggering to think about. Again, like I mentioned, I knew my dad would have been so high risk. So even though he did not die, of course, of COVID, he died a long time ago. I was like, okay, he is the exact reason that we have to be safe and masks, care homes and rehab centers. Yeah, my dad gave up his whole life succumbed to ALS. His career was out the window and that is what it is. But I think he had a lot of identity loss, big guy, tall guy, dads have their pride or whatever. And was like a 6'4" big guy. And my mom took care of him for years until, he was completely paralyzed. She literally physically couldn't lift him. And we're talking details I don't even really think about to this day. But I'm like, he didn't shower. He didn't go to the bathroom. Like, how did that, for over a decade. And that's also, there's a lot of issues with inequity of the fact that he was able to be in a care home is a wonderful opportunity that a lot of people can of course not even do. But my mom, after many years, like I can't pick him up. And so he was in isolation for a long time, no career. He, lived 45 minutes away from us. I visited once a week. I have guilt around, I should have gone every day. But when you're in middle school and high school, it's like a wild time. It's crazy time. And he didn't talk for the last year and a half, but your brain is never affected by ALS. So it's really interesting of trapped in your own body. So I empathize with him and people who have ALS and other similar diseases or anything where you're bedridden, I think is really challenging. And shout out to anyone this year whose loved ones were bedridden from COVID or otherwise.
Yeah. Thank you for telling me that. Thanks for answering me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Love is a weird word. I'm like, I love to talk about it, but I don't, but I do, but it's like, it's the way through. Right. And there's still some people to this day. Thank you for sharing about your experience who, we forget, as artists, we're a little more open about these things. There's some people who will actually never talk about their loved one. If anyone listening feels like that might be them, I encourage you to open up to one friend, like every year, open up to one more person or every month if you can. But I do this show. There's a few people in my life specifically who have never opened up about their losses. And so thank you. I think we take it for granted. I sometimes do that I'm able to talk about this because I'm just like, but you have to. But a lot of people don't, So thank you for sharing. And yours is so recent, and people who are recently grieving are going to really relate to your story specifically, even more so than, other podcast people who was 5 years ago, 10. So I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me talk about it. Like it's definitely, sometimes you don't want to talk about it. And I hold space for people as well who don't want to talk about it at all. Like that's just what they have to do to get by. And also not talking about it doesn't mean that they're not in your thoughts and that they're not also grieving very deeply. In the beginning, it was a little hard for me too, because I would look at other family members who weren't like outwardly expressing it. Like even my own brother, he just wasn't as talkative about it. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't deeply miss him and have all of his own feelings and nuances and anger and, stuff. But yeah, everybody's going to do it differently. So just to kind of go back to what I said before, like feel whatever you're going to feel. And you also don't need to say anything. Like even little things like, oh, have you seen the new Bo Burnham special Inside?
Oh, why is that so good? It's so good.
It's so good. But did you see where he during like White Woman's Instagram, which was brilliant, where he was like posting talking about someone who's posting about their mother being dead? And like,
I don't even remember that.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
That one hit me hard because I was like, oh man, is it bad that we do that? Like, it just made me really reflect on it. I was like, no, but he's kind of painting it in a way that in my mind was like, nice, like that it's showing that you can connect through Instagram to grieve about this thing. And then I was just really brought back to being like, oh man, I remember dreading feeling like I had to post it online to let people know that my dad was dead. And that like people going through that in a digital age is freaking weird. That's weird, man, that you feel the need to like, I don't know. That's a weird thing to navigate as well, I think, for people who have lost a loved one. Like, do you feel like you need to post it? Even Father's Day being there tomorrow. It's like, do I have to say, like, you don't have to do anything, but it's just like these weird sort of things that we see people, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, no, I think when people who haven't lost a parent personally, like make a joke about it, even in a tasteful comedic way, I do have a reaction. I'm like, maybe it's actually like pretty hard and fucked up. So that's kind of how I feel. But there's so many nuances in comedy, and I respect people going for it, right? It's like, we can't all have experienced every single thing. So it's like, maybe I make a joke at some point in my stand-up about going to therapy, which to me, I'm like, yeah, and I do. And a lot of people do. So I can say that, hey, there might be someone who sees my set that's like, you know what? I've had a really traumatic experience in therapy, or I really struggle with mental health, and I don't think any therapy joke is funny, right? So I try and just, take it with a grain of salt, unless things are really, really fucked up or racist or unacceptable. That's a whole other story. But I'm like, I think my reaction was like, I think a dead
it
mom
made
and
me
dad
stop.
is like
It made me stop a little. I was like, huh? I was like, this is
yeah,
bad. Do I accept this? But I was like, if anything, I thought, I agree with that. I agree with that too. There are certain things that you're like, should we be making fun of this? But he went for it. So yeah.
Yeah. And he's so talented, and like, I don't think it's in bad taste. And it's like, goes back to the whole cancel culture thing with comedy and acting and entertainment. Like, we all have so much content out there, videos, whether, it's like, you talked about this on BuzzFeed. I have a podcast. It's like, all of our stuff's going to be out there. We need to be held accountable, of course. And there's some people that are extremely absurd and need to be like, need a huge reality check, but like, let's not cancel Bo Burnham because he said one dead mom. You know what I mean? It's like having the line. And I think it's common sense, but then to a lot of people, it's not. It's so complicated. This is another podcast. Yeah, that's crazy. Okay. No, I'm not going to say crazy. It's wild. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate getting to hear more about your story. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up? And also, if you don't mind sharing where people can connect with you online if they'd like to speak with you or follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess like a closing thing I would say is like for other artists or other creatives, like coming out of the pandemic who've lost somebody or who are just experiencing grief in their own way, like not feeling like you have to be so about like grind culture and like productivity, like, that's a big thing. Like I'm about to plug a short film I'm making, but like, I'm really grateful that like I was able to take this time and write something that I think people will connect with. And I want to make it because I think it will come for other people who are grieving. It's not necessarily about COVID, but that you can use your creativity to like soothe yourself and also like share it with others, but that also you don't feel like you need to. Like I have a lot of friends who are like, I didn't write anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't make anything. It's like, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, And also if you did have the chance to make something, be really proud too, that you got, not only did you get through a pandemic, but like you produced something. And like, I'm very much, like I said, like imposter syndrome. Like I want to shit on everything that I make. And like, it makes me cringe to even want to say that I'm making a short film, but to like be proud of yourself a little bit that, if you did make anything, and even if you didn't, be proud of yourself too, that you're still kind of pursuing an artistic life after a pandemic like this. So you can follow me on Instagram at Michelle_Emanuela with one L. And then also you can follow me at Next Exit Film, which is a short film that I wrote and I'm going to be acting in that shoots in August. We have an Indiegogo campaign that ends today and we are almost at our goal. So that'll be coming at the end of the summer. And that's a movie that I wrote before, like I started before the pandemic, but it actually has to do with grief. It actually has to do with the character of Luke, who loses his father and coming through that. So that was weird too, to write that about death before my dad even died. And then I shelved that for so long. And then I came back to it over the pandemic and like finished it kind of with new eyes, I think, like looking at it with new eyes. So yeah, be proud of yourself. That's it. That's all I got.
Congratulations, Michelle. I think that's wonderful. That's amazing. You're making a short. You go, girl. Can't wait to see. I will absolutely be checking it out. I love a good short film, and be proud of you. Thanks for the advice to others, but I hope you are proud of you too, because you did it, girl. You're doing it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yay. Awesome. Yodo, you only die once.